All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Richardson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Communication Specialist at the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. If this is your first or third Immigrant Forum meeting, welcome or welcome back. And we'll kind of do some announcements at the beginning. Let me go over the agenda. So we'll start out with some updates from me about just the Immigrant Forum function in general, how to participate and get involved. And then we'll hear some updates from our SF Immigrant Forum Steering Committee, followed by our special topic presentation of the month. We'll invite Triveni DeFries to speak about the Everyone Belongs Here resource website, as well as the UCSF Health and Human Rights Initiative, and we'll get into that in a moment. We'll have some Q&A for those presentations or just general questions, and we'll wrap it up from there. And again, this is a webinar format, so we won't be allowing folks to go off mute with questions. So all of the questions, please use that Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be keeping track of those questions and try to get to as many as possible. So, if you're unfamiliar, the SF Immigrant Forum is a renewed alignment for those working to support immigrants, asylees, and refugees in San Francisco. It's a three-pronged effort spearheaded by four city departments: OSEA, the San Francisco Department of Public Health, the SF Human Services Agency, and the Mayor's Office of Community Housing and Development, and MOHCD. And that three-prong effort is with a resource website that shares immigrant serving resources, upcoming events such as citizenship workshops or other immigration workshops, as well as know your rights and other community-based information. The second part of the SF Immigrant Forum is a community listserv that anyone can join and share resources. It's a Google group, and we'll share more information on how to join that. And then the third part is this meeting that we have on a bi-monthly basis. So again, thank you all for being here and joining. That first resource, we also call it the SF Immigrant Forum page or Immigrant Services and Resources. This is on sf.gov/immigrants. And we really encourage folks to use this as a referral website, a way to access resources in the city and in community all in one location, anything from immigration legal support to health, housing, food information available to anyone, and other information from state and county level support for immigrants. And then that second prong is the listserv. I think many of you are on the listserv already. If you haven't joined, here's some instructions on how to do so. You can go to groups.google.com, type SF Immigrant Forum, join the group. And then many folks have been invited but haven't accepted that invite. So check your inboxes for that or reach out to us afterwards to see if you can get on that listserv. But it's a way to boost upcoming events, resources, or opportunities amongst this group of service providers in the Bay Area. And our next Immigrant Forum meeting after today will be in July, on July 30th. And we're excited to announce that forum meeting has a topic already decided, and it will be language access policy and community resources. And we'll be hearing from both the city and some community partners around updates to language access policy in San Francisco, and then also other resources that folks can access in the community. I'll have my colleague Melissa drop in the link to sign up in the chat, but the event is already live on sf.gov/immigrants, so we hope to see you at the next meeting. And my last update is just an invitation for any groups here that feel like they have something that they want to share with the large group in this SF Immigrant Forum webinar format in the future. We do have an opportunity for you to request a presentation. Ideally, it's not a time-sensitive presentation because these do happen, every other month. You can scan the QR code and fill out the short Google form and let us know what you'd like to present on, and I'll follow up with you on that. But my colleague Melissa will also drop the link in the chat for folks that are interested. And those presentations we request that they're around 15 to 20 minutes in length, and that they're informational about a service, a program, or an upcoming opportunity that would be beneficial for everyone to learn about. So that's another opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to my colleague, the Deputy Director of OSEA, Richard Whipple, to give updates from our department and then to pass it to our other department leaders here. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Jamie. And hey, everybody, good afternoon. It's great to be with you all. As Jamie mentioned, I'm Rich Whipple, he, him, his, and I get the privilege of working with Jamie and my colleagues here at OSEA, the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. Just wanted to thank our steering committee as always, and the great leadership of the Department of Public Health with Christy, Andy with HSA, and Vicky with MOHCD for leading this space, especially Christy, who's held this space for many years. And we really appreciate what a valuable space it is, especially in 2025. I just wanted to thank the co-chairs of the space and, of course, Jamie for such skillful coordination and facilitation. Just a few updates from our department, and we'll kind of pass it to the other steering committee members to share out on their departments, things that are going on. I wanted to first just clarify that this meeting is, this forum is an open space for any service provider or any community or city entity to share and learn, and features different topics on a rotating basis. That's not exclusively focused on responding to the needs of the moment, because I know 2025 is incredibly heavy and intense with really complicated policy shifts and like a tidal wave of really traumatic things that our immigrant community is enduring. We do have a separate community response planning space that meets every month. That's a smaller group of folks who are receiving those more specific immigration updates. So folks who are interested in joining those spaces, please feel free to reach out to me separately and feel free to get plugged into that meeting, which does stay pretty much in that lane of really understanding what's happening currently in the policy space and how we respond collectively as a city and community coalition. Just wanted to clarify the difference between those two spaces, and then a few updates from our department. So one thing that we're doing recently is making sure that our city departments, of which there are many, are very well acquainted with the city's sanctuary city policy, which really dictates our response to ICE enforcement and gives us protocols for how to respond to any ICE inquiries or presence. So we've been partnering with our city attorney's office and other city departments to make sure all city agencies are aware of the sanctuary city law locally and what that means and looks like in implementation. So we had a wonderful training of trainers a few weeks ago, tooting my own horn, and the team for putting together what I think was a very valuable training, and we've been sharing those resources out. Just a reminder that policy really is pointed towards and really relevant to city departments because it's a city policy that describes how the city works. So there's lots of follow-up that's happening with other city agencies. And of course, we continue to point our community providers to community coalitions that also provide similar types of tips and guidances on how organizations that don't fall under the purview of the sanctuary ordinance can be prepared and respond to any ICE inquiries or changes in immigration enforcement. And those organizations are the San Francisco Immigrant Legal and Education Network and the Rapid Response Network. So please do make sure to connect with those entities if you have questions about what your organization can be doing to respond to the current enforcement landscape that we are experiencing. The other thing we wanted to share on a more positive note is that coming up in just a couple of weeks, actually less than 2 weeks, our Immigrant Rights Commission is hosting our annual Immigrant Leadership Awards, which is super exciting. And we really hope that folks will come out and participate. We think it's so critical that we counter so much of the negativity in the national media landscape with celebration and affirmative appreciation of so many of the incredible folks who hold it down right here in San Francisco. So let's please give people the flowers they deserve. I know our presenter organization today is a former awardee, so very fitting that we're plugging today this award again. And it's such an important space. And again, kudos to our commission and our staff for putting in the work to facilitate a nominations process and to identify tremendous leaders and nonprofits that are really supporting our immigrants during these tough times. Otherwise, those are the main pieces that we wanted to share on behalf of our office. There's other things that have been going on in terms of our amazing language access work and a community interpreter training series that wrapped up today. So just wanted to thank our team there and continue to plant the seeds for language justice and encourage folks to partner with us when you have ideas around language access. I know we'll be doing annual trainings of community interpreters. So if your organization didn't get to send somebody this time around, hopefully the next spring there'll be another opportunity to participate in our community. So that is what's going on in our neck of the woods, and super excited to hear from one of our grantees today, our former grantees, Triveni, who we know has been such a wonderful leader in this space. But I will pass it over to Andy at the Human Services Agency to share out anything that's going on there.
Yes, thanks, Rich. Happy to be here, and good afternoon to everybody. I don't have a very long list of items to review for updates from my agency, the Human Services Agency, but one thing that's been on my mind is, the clients who come through our agency who are eligible for refugee cash assistance. That includes those who have obtained the status of asylum or refugee, as well as some other groups. During the last few years, they have been entitled to 12 months of refugee cash assistance or RCA benefits. And as of May 5th of this year, that has been cut down to 4 months of assistance. So that's definitely not good news. But I felt it was necessary to bring that up because that definitely does represent a cut from the federal level. But again, that went into place on May 5th. And so what that means then is that the relevant date of May 5th corresponds with the date that people received their status. So if someone got their status of asylum or refugee, also includes Cuban and Haitian entrants, as well as some others. If they got their status before May 5th, 2025, they would still be eligible for 12 months of refugee cash assistance or RCA benefits. But if they received their status after May 5th on or after May 5th, then they would only be eligible for 4 months of assistance. So definitely, something that we're afraid will affect people in a negative way, but wanted to report that. And in San Francisco, what we do, in addition to giving those refugee cash assistance benefits to people with asylum and refugee status, we also give basically the same benefit or the same level of assistance to those who qualify for applying for a T visa for trafficking victims or a U visa for victims of certain crimes. So the assistance for those folks then would go down as well to 4 months instead of 12 months. So I think that's the most important announcement that I have. HSA is concerned that, of course, we're seeing less newcomers these days, which of course is not a surprise due to the chaos with the immigration system. But our doors are still open. We don't want people to be afraid of accessing services. And I will remind everyone that there has been no change at all so far in the public charge designation. And you might recall that in the first Trump presidency, that was a big issue that we dealt with a lot. HSA did a lot of outreach and sort of education about public charge, with the concept there being that, if you're receiving public benefits, it could potentially affect your eligibility for certain immigration designations in the future. But that, although there was a change in public charge during the Trump administration, it was reversed by the Biden administration, and so we're still under those rules from the Biden administration today. So we don't want people to be afraid to access benefits, and because in most and almost all cases, it will not affect your eligibility for adjusting your immigration status. Of course, you want to consult an attorney for all these things, but the main message is that we don't want people to be afraid to access benefits that they are legally uh, entitled to. And at the same time, we acknowledge that people are scared. People are hesitant to um, access benefits they're entitled to. And so, for everyone listening, we just want to encourage you um, to still, feel free to access those benefits. So that, I think, really is the extent of my updates, and happy to answer any questions. But thank you.
Thanks, Andy. My name is Christy Dietrich, and I'm with the San Francisco Department of Public Health, and there were several of us from the Population Health Division that attended the OSEA training on sanctuary city policy, and as well as from the hospital. And I just want to share that DPH takes this issue and empowerment of staff very seriously because we do our work in public spaces, and ICE is allowed to enter public spaces. So our goal is to ensure that all DPH staff feel prepared and confident to respond to any of those appearances in the future. That includes, I just want to put out there, includes like lobbies of buildings. You know, a lot of us work kind of in office buildings and we think we're maybe protected. So it's important for even entry staff of buildings to learn about this. So that's our aim. And I think now I'm feeling very excited to introduce Dr. Triveni DeFries, who is a longtime colleague and partner in work together. She is an assistant professor of internal medicine at UCSF and medical director of Richard Fine People's Clinic, which is on the San Francisco General Hospital campus. She's also the director of education and training for UCSF's Health and Human Rights Initiative, and the substance use warm line consultant for the National Clinical Consultation Center. And she's also co-leads the National Asylum Medicine Training. And we invited her here to talk about how to think about people that are immigrants of all different backgrounds and statuses, but thinking about how to work with people in a healthcare context and within a healthcare context, ensuring their health. So I'm going to pass it to you, Dr. Triveni. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's such an honor to be invited here by Christy, a longtime collaborator, by OSEA, a supporter of our work, and by so many colleagues that I already see in the audience. So I'm very excited for this. This is going to be a presentation in two parts, but we'll stop in the middle for questions. And as you heard, I'm a physician. I'm a physician at San Francisco General Hospital, an assistant professor at UCSF, and I direct the Health and Human Rights Initiative. And I know that most people in the audience are not healthcare professionals, but I'm here to say that we are standing in solidarity with many of you who are caring for immigrant communities right now, and we are here to collaborate. And in that spirit, I am really proud to present Everyone Belongs Here, which is an online resource at everyonebelongshere.net that brings together resources to try to help healthcare professionals and others make our healthcare settings more welcoming, inclusive, and safe for immigrants and refugees. I'm going to tell you more about it, but I want to highlight that we have not labeled this as a university product. This is really a grassroots effort. On the bottom are my wonderful collaborators. All of us are clinicians who care for patients. And we also have collaborators at the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, CIPC, the Children's Partnership, ImHelp, and Legal Link, who support the work of Everyone Belongs Here as well. My objectives today are that you kind of leave here knowing how Everyone Belongs Here promotes immigrant rights in the healthcare setting, and we can highlight some key resources for the healthcare setting and spot opportunities for resource sharing amongst ourselves and possible collaboration in the future. So as I said, this is an online resource that was created. It was created and is maintained by a coalition of healthcare providers in the Bay Area to support those of us who work with immigrant families. And our goal is to provide accurate and up-to-date and a really easily navigable site of information on immigration policy, on its effects on health, and on the best practices for those working in healthcare. So all the content that we put onto Everyone Belongs Here is publicly accessible. It's been carefully curated by our team, and it includes direct links to trusted resources. And this is like an active and working resource. It's a work in progress at all times. and we're constantly updating it as we see things so rapidly evolving and new tools and resources coming out. And so we really welcome your feedback and your suggestions for improving our content, and also suggestions for resources that we can add to it. So thank you for being a part of this effort. And then I also want to highlight that what we have on this site does not provide legal advice, even though it approaches a lot of different legal topics. So please do consult with lawyers for legal advice. I want to take us through a couple of these sections to highlight some of the key resources that I think are important for you to know that we in healthcare are thinking about, because these are things that you can communicate to your clients to try to engender more trust and safety when they need to seek care, when they get sick, as we all do. So the first is inclusive communication. So we have a section on clear and public declarations for equity and against discrimination within our healthcare institutions. And we have examples of things like posters, buttons, and letters of support that clinics, that healthcare settings can actually proactively share with patients. And so these are all things that help healthcare settings to signal that they are inclusive and welcoming places as much as possible. Another section that we have, and I'd say this is a very, very full section, is something that I heard Christy and Rich and others referring to, which is preparedness for ICE interactions in our various settings. And in this case, we're talking about if ICE were to come to clinics, to the hospital, and how we would respond. And it's incredibly important that we are prepared with protocols. In San Francisco, the San Francisco Department of Public Health has a robust protocol that has been endorsed by the city. That's something that we have a link to on our website. But what we hear is many people are working in healthcare settings that don't necessarily have such a proactive protocol or policy. And so we created something called the Blue Card. We're all familiar with the red cards that we share with clients, with community members, with each other. But the Blue Card is something that was created to actually share with healthcare providers so that they could have a quick guide to ICE interactions. And this is something that can be small. It can be made into a one-pager and printed in the clinic, and it can be customized to the clinic where you are able to input the name of an authorized individual. Usually that's the administrator on duty at a given healthcare site, and your local rapid response line. But this helps to educate us in healthcare about what we should do and what we should not do, what we should say and what we should not say if we do have ICE enter into our clinical spaces. We also have on the website some practice scenarios for people to be able to put this into practice, which is really important for preparation. And then we also have a number of different institutional protocols that are publicly available so that people can use them as models in places that don't necessarily have them yet. We have a section on medical forms and letters. This is perhaps sounds very dry, but is actually incredibly impactful. Patients or attorneys often request forms of health-related documentation for various types of immigration cases and proceedings. These are really important to know about because I guarantee your clients are sometimes asking you about these types of forms or letters, and sometimes these are major barriers to being able to progress in immigration proceedings. And so these can include things like a request for accommodations in court, a bond hearing for detention release. It can be documentation of a healthcare condition like a developmental disability, chronic illness, attendance in treatment. We are approached about letters like writing a letter for a child with special medical needs, parents of a child with special medical needs. Sample letters are something we have for people who need to visit a sick relative, like advocate for a family member in another country to visit their medically sick relative. We have letters of support around deportation of patients for various reasons. Letters documenting if a parent or a patient has resided in the United States for over 2 years or developed to support families at risk of expedited removal. We have letters requesting removal of an ankle monitor and a sample for that, even letters attesting to good moral character that are needed. One form that comes up often for me as an internist who takes care of adults is the N648 form, which is a disability exception for citizenship. This can be filled out by any medical provider on behalf of immigrant patients who are applying for citizenship but are not able to complete the English or the civics portions of the U.S. citizen test because of a cognitive impairment. That can sometimes be a mental health disorder or a neurocognitive disorder. And so a doctor can actually complete a letter on that patient's behalf. And what I really want to portray to you is many times healthcare professionals are not familiar with how to write these letters. They're approached with different requests. They're often overwhelmed, but they don't know how to write these kinds of letters or forms and to do them effectively. And so at Everyone Belongs Here at the site, we have a number of templates and examples and guidance for healthcare professionals. So if you're a clinician like me, you can find that information at the site, which really helps. But if you're not and you're supporting a client in your organization or elsewhere, you can also point their clinician to this site so that their clinician has a template to follow. And that much increases the chances that their clinician is going to say, yes, I'll help with that. Today, it's already come up around the importance of discussing public charge and using public benefits. Obviously, this affects us in the healthcare setting quite a bit. And we're facing, new news about Medi-Cal. And so we will be updating the Everyone Belongs Here site with the most up-to-date information on health insurance, as well as a number of other public benefits that we connect patients with through the healthcare setting that include things like food resources, housing resources, and more. As of now, we encourage patients to continue to seek benefits, especially health insurance, and to do that in a very timely fashion. And we have a lot of immigrant patients who are utilizing Medi-Cal at this time. Documenting in the medical record is something that we are addressing on Everyone Belongs Here very proactively. Simply put, HIPAA, which are the laws that protect private medical information, HIPAA laws are still in place, which means that any health information that may identify a specific individual is protected by the law. That said, experts advise that as much as possible, without hindering clinical care, healthcare providers like me avoid collecting or recording immigration-related information. And you may have seen that in Texas and Florida now, there are policies that require hospitals to ask patients about their immigration status. So that is something that we try to avoid doing whenever possible. Even in those states, by the way, people can decline to answer and providers cannot make access to care depend on their response. But something that we issue guidance for medical providers on is that it's very unlikely that medical records would be subpoenaed. In that case, there may be a law enforcement request for patient information, but best practice is to only document medically relevant information. And if necessary, we use language to describe medically relevant issues, something like acculturation stressors, instead of really explicit information about immigration status that is not necessarily relevant to the medical condition. And we do not proactively ask or document status. So that's something that you can reassure clients about because that is the best practice that we promote when people come to visit us in the healthcare setting. There are other sections of resources on Everyone Belongs Here that include resources for the community. So that's a lot of links to tools and resources that you might be using as well as a community service provider, as well as advocacy. And we have advocacy toolkits, and we also have up-to-date advocacy opportunities like particular state bills and things that healthcare providers are really relevant to and can engage on. And lastly, I just want to add that we've added online training and educational sessions. These are short 1 hour talks over lunchtime that support healthcare providers working with immigrant communities on very timely topics. They're virtual on Zoom. They're recorded and they are kept under password protection on our site. So they can be accessed later. But if you are interested in attending these, please go ahead and sign up for our listserv, and you'll hear about announcements like these sorts of new educational sessions. And I will say that some of these even feature you all in this community as speakers. So it's really an opportunity for us to continue to engage on different topics. Tomorrow, there's actually a talk on family preparedness plans for healthcare providers. June 5th, we have a talk featuring some of you on understanding civil surgeon or green card medical exams and how to support patients, clinicians, and attorneys in this often complicated process. June 12th, we have a talk on building trust, privacy, safety, and documentation in healthcare practice. So delving more into this issue of documentation that I touched on today. And lastly, I just want to say that if you have a resource to share that you think is something the healthcare community would benefit from, please do add it at our website. There's a way to enter in your information, suggest a resource, become a collaborator. This is really a living site, and so we welcome your feedback. That's all I have to say about everyonebelongshere.net, and I'm happy to take questions on it before we go to our next section.
Right. It looks like we do have one question. Let me pull it up. And just to clarify, so all of the links and resources you've shared today are all available at the everyonebelongshere.net website.
Yes, yes.
Great. And then our one question was, in a hospital, where do public spaces end? The lobbies, units, individual PT rooms, or is it all considered public?
Great question. And I'll tell you what my understanding of this is, which is that private exam rooms where patients are receiving care are considered private spaces, but something like a waiting room or a lobby is considered a public space.
Thank you. And that, I think those are all of our questions for this half of the presentation. So thank you so much. And oh, some of you are coming in. So what about a hospital unit?
Oh, that is a really great question. I am not 100% sure. My understanding is if a patient is in a hospital room, a private hospital room, that is likely considered a private room. But there are a number of spaces within hospitals, like, family waiting rooms, even on the hospital ward, or lobbies or hallways or nursing stations. And I think those are likely a more gray area.
Yeah, and I think there's some kind of follow-up questions about specificities, and I would just say that it's important for your internal teams to have those definitions of what's private and public spaces, and probably to have a working group on site to determine those. I don't know if you want to add anything to that,
Yeah,
Triveni.
and I mean, what I would add is exactly be familiar with the protocol of your institution. And most of those protocols would involve, no matter what particular space is in your hospital, would involve asking to hold while you contact your administrator on duty. And so that no matter where you are in the hospital, if you do interact with ICE, that is the step you take. You pause and you call for help. So that the administrator on duty can really implement your protocol with fidelity.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. And our last question, and then we'll move on to the next presentation, is can someone complain or report discrimination based on immigration status in a hospital or even like an ambulance setting, if you know?
That's a really interesting question. And I'm not sure who you're referring to making a complaint to, because I think there's probably different audiences for that complaint. So I think if you witness discrimination against a patient, you absolutely can report that. And there's probably reporting procedures for your own hospital. Like there's a way to file those as for example, an incident report within your own hospital. There may be some other type of body that you're thinking of reporting to, and I'm not sure exactly which that would be. I will say I work closely with the group Physicians for Human Rights, and I know that they are doing it sounds like Rich might have another idea, but they are doing a national survey of incidents like this that clinicians are witnessing on the ground to try to be able to track these. And so I'm happy to put it in the chat later, but they have an active survey that if you witness events like this, they really want to know about it and they're tracking them. And so that's one option.
And I just wanted to chime in, this is Rich, everyone, about healthcare settings that are part of the city's Department of Public Health. So that mostly looks like community clinics, of course, General Hospital, and Laguna Honda. And as official like city facilities, they are subject to our sanctuary city ordinance, which does mean that folks are forbidden from asking about immigration status or collecting immigration status unless required by federal law. So if that is violated, then folks can contact our Human Rights Commission to file a complaint against any city agency, including, clinics and hospitals part of our public health department, for violating the sanctuary city ordinance by asking or discriminating based on somebody's immigration status. We can put the link into the chat as well about how folks can file complaints. But again, this really only applies to publicly run hospitals or medical spaces.
I think that's such a great point, and it's something that we actually will add. I think we should add to Everyone Belongs Here, so that people can know that filing a complaint is actually an action that they can take.
Right, it looks like we answered all the questions. Thank you. And we can move on to our next presentation. Take it away.
Perfect. Okay, you guys are stuck with me for another portion of this presentation, but I hope that this is one that gives us some hope. So I'm going to talk about forensic medical and mental health evaluations through the work of the UCSF Health and Human Rights Initiative. And this is really an example of a way that we as healthcare professionals can really make a difference and make a life-saving difference, I think, for many of our shared clients from immigrant communities in San Francisco. I'm going to tell you about what we do at the UCSF Health and Human Rights Initiative, show you how healthcare professionals do these sorts of forensic medical and mental health evaluations, and specifically how and when you can refer for our pro bono services. Our mission at the UCSF Health and Human Rights Initiative is to uphold justice and equity for immigrant, asylee, and refugee families through science, education, capacity building, and research. And our vision is a world where families fleeing persecution and injustices have access to care and resources they need to live a safe and fulfilling life. So I know that's really a shared mission and vision amongst all of us here today. And I'm going to specifically focus on our local direct service that we do in the work of our forensic medical and mental health evaluations in this presentation. But please know that we have a number of other collaborations with partners like you that are focused on capacity building, training, technical assistance, and research. And so really, truly open to collaboration on many different fronts. But today what we're talking about are asylum seekers who we know are much more likely to have a successful claim if they have attorney representation. But what you may not know is that when a healthcare professional is involved in a case and provides a forensic medical affidavit, that the chances nationally, and this is from a couple years ago, but the chances nationally of being granted asylum go up from 45% to 85%. So a big jump. And so we have a role here. We know that asylum seekers, people fleeing persecution, bear the burden of proving that they meet the definition of a refugee. But they only have their narrative accounts, their stories, and the scars on their bodies and minds to attest to the horror that they've endured. But healthcare professionals can actually provide some objective documentation here of physical injuries, of psychological trauma, And this is evidence that can be used to corroborate this narrative, the story that they carry. And so when we do a forensic medical evaluation, we are identifying the consequences of trauma through a medical lens. And then we are evaluating the consistency of our findings with the client's story, the narrative. And then we communicate this to adjudicators through written testimony, through an affidavit, and through oral testimony sometimes. And so I want you to know that a forensic medical evaluation can contribute to an asylum case. There's a lot of different ways, and it really depends on the legal need of the case. But some of these examples can be through documenting the clinical evidence of physical and psychological impacts of harm, and we do this in a private and a safe and dignified manner. Oftentimes we discover details that have not previously been disclosed to the attorney. I'd say that almost always happens. We can help to explain a client's affect. We can explain inconsistencies, difficulties in giving testimony. We often are called in to explain why somebody did not meet a one-year bar towards applying for asylum or meeting a particular filing deadline. And then, lastly, we provide context for people's physical or psychological symptoms, which sometimes have gotten better and resolved over time and sometimes have not gotten better. But we can help to try to really holistically give more context around that. What we can't do as healthcare professionals in these evaluations is make any legal determinations. We're not lawyers and we're not judges. And the other thing we're not doing is actually providing medical care. So these evaluations are not therapy. They are not the provision of actual treatments. But I will say that oftentimes these are quite healing for people. And the ability to talk with a professional who's trained over the course of hours about their trauma and understand their symptoms better, often their psychological symptoms, or have their physical symptoms checked, is actually quite healing. And that's really our goal. We also know we're not providing medical care, but we do provide referrals and recommendations for ongoing care when we think it's appropriate. So based on this body of work, in 2019, we founded the UCSF Human Rights Collaborative, which is a clinic. It's facilitated by medical students and a number of really dedicated faculty. And we offer these pro bono forensic medical and mental health evaluations for asylum seekers and other immigrants who are seeking humanitarian protection. And we do this for both adults and children. We have a range of clinicians who take care of all different ages and have different specialties as well. And we hold both in-person clinics and clinics over Zoom virtually. And I'll tell you the way that this works. So we take referrals directly from immigration attorneys who reach out to us. They fill out an online referral form that I'm going to show you. And they tell us particularly like what role they want us to play in this person's case and give us some details about that case. If we're able to match the case with a clinician that meets the deadlines needed and meets the needs of the case, then we complete an evaluation, and we often have trainees with us. That means like residents or medical students, even fellows or other clinicians that we're trying to train up to do this, to increase the capacity to do this. We write an affidavit, a written document. We edit that. We have some back and forth often with the attorney, and that's submitted to immigration court. And then sometimes, and increasingly, I will say, we are called to testify in court and provide oral testimony, which is something that we're prepared to do. If you want to refer to us in this process, you can do so from our website. The website is right here, and it will take you to an online referral form that is secure and has you, as an attorney, fill in different information about your client's case, and then a bunch of different logistic and demographic factors so that we can make sure that we try to match the case with the right gendered clinician, with the right language, and with the right specialization of the clinician for the case. Please note that referrals should be submitted by the client's attorney. So we see clients that have attorneys at this time. If we encounter folks that don't have attorneys, we're happy to refer them to OSEA's resources to try to connect with legal support. We ask that you just fill out one referral per client because we do triage cases based on age. So age 25 or older, they'll see a provider who specializes in seeing adults. 25 or less, they'll see a pediatric provider. And we have seen several members of families, and I will say even when we see one person, oftentimes it has an impact across a whole family. We take referrals for asylum cases, but also for other types of immigration proceedings, including withholding of removal, Convention Against Torture, U visa, T visa, VAWA, special immigrant juvenile status, hardship, or other types of cases. And so we have done all of those and really use a very similar methodology for them. We review our referrals at least monthly, and I will say we get more referrals than we possibly have capacity for. And so if we can't accommodate the case, which is really truly heartbreaking for us, but happens, then we try to send you resources for other places that you can seek a pro bono evaluation. And we've seen clients for all different bases for asylum. Here's just some of them. Including gang violence, intimate partner violence, political persecution, sexual violence, gender-based violence, really all of the protected grounds for asylum that include race, religion, political affiliation, as I said, belonging in a group such as their sexual orientation, LGBTQIA plus folks, indigenous identity or race, and religion. And what we use is a method called from the Istanbul Protocol, which is an international protocol that provides legal standards and general guidance on how healthcare professionals should be documenting ill treatment and torture. And so this is what our training is in, this is what our methods are, and this is what we'll be explaining in our affidavit as the methods that we use to come to our conclusions. And we do these evaluations using some tools. And so just so you kind of know what happens in the exam room, we do an interview where we're, for the most part, collecting history and asking very open-ended and trauma-informed questions. We do this with a lot of time spent on informed consent. These usually take place over the course of 3 to 5 hours. If we're in person, we have like very nice private exam rooms and tea and food. And so it's really meant to be the most comfortable environment it can be. But this is not easy. It's not easy for people to talk about the hardest things that have happened to them with a new person. We use standard methods of diagnosing mental health disorders like the DSM-5 criteria to diagnose depression, PTSD, other mental health issues. And we do a physical exam for those that have had a history of physical violence. And we document with photos, scars for the affidavit if clients give us permission. And really, the documentation of physical findings is weighed very heavily in court. And so what we find is we often get referrals just for a psychological evaluation. But when we review the case in depth, we see that there is a history of physical violence that likely may have left injuries or scars. And so we offer a physical exam to those folks. During the course of the evaluation, we usually end up uncovering and diagnose PTSD or depression often for the first time. We talk to people about their medical conditions, if they know of them, if they've connected with healthcare resources, and we often recognize that they've never connected with healthcare before. And so we offer resources and referrals for insurance enrollment, for medical and mental health follow-up, and for other types of social determinants of health. So we have resource sheets about food resources, housing resources, et cetera. And much of that is sourced with information that's collated by OSEA. We have 3 partners, though, that are really our prime offerings for follow-up. And so I just want to call those out. One is the Asylum Seeker Health Services Program through the SFDPH Newcomer Health Program, and one that perhaps Christy and others have presented to you all before. But we refer clients who have not enrolled in Medi-Cal or other health insurance, and who need follow-up, especially with a medical home, to a navigator through their program. And that navigator can follow up with the client by phone. We have really strong partnerships with two different organizations that specialize in ongoing mental health care for immigrants and refugees, and that's the Trauma Recovery Center, which is located in San Francisco, and through their Survivors of Torture program, are really well suited to see our clients who are San Francisco residents. Additionally, we have a very strong relationship with Partnerships for Trauma Recovery, which is another organization that provides ongoing mental health care and case management services to refugees and primarily asylum seekers. So we make direct referrals to these folks, and we're able to inform those referrals with hours of experience with the client so that really these mental health care providers can pick up where we leave off. So our very good news is that we've now seen over 400 cases. And for the cases where we know about the adjudication status, all of our clients have done quite well and have received legal protection. So none of these clients have been removed or have been deported. Granted, we don't know about all of our cases, so many of them have had fluctuating timelines or other types of upheaval, but we continue to track the legal outcomes of our cases. And from what we see, it really seems like what we're doing makes a difference. And that's what we hear from attorneys and clients. So please feel free, if you are an attorney or legal organization, or you're aware of a client who might benefit from this kind of evaluation, please feel free to refer to us. And if you do have a client who's working with us, I just want to go through a couple of things that you might expect so that you can best prepare your client. And that's really that we want to clarify a client's preferences around gender, around language. We do require a declaration. It doesn't have to be the final declaration, but a declaration upon referral. And any other relevant records like medical records are very, very helpful to receive before we do the evaluation. We ask that clients do several different psych screeners before the evaluation if possible. That really, really helps us to make the most of our time together. And just know that we do meet with attorneys ahead of the evaluation to understand our role in the case, and then are available to debrief afterwards or if issues come up, and really do ask that attorneys help us to prepare if we're called to give oral testimony. We provide interpretation services pro bono. That's something given in kind by UCSF Interpreter Services. Occasionally, there's a language that they can't accommodate, in which case we'll coordinate directly with you, with the attorney, about figuring out how to find a good interpreter. These can take a while. These can take several hours, and it's really important that you tell your client that so they can do things like arrange childcare and make sure that the schedule works for them, because this does take really some sense of presence and private space, whether it's in person or over Zoom. We're happy that we can provide taxi transportation for clients. This really helps because this can be quite taxing, and you don't want to be like navigating BART at 9 o'clock after you've done a 4-hour evaluation. And we also have food and other supplies and self-care things in our clinic that we give to clients. As I said, we provide this referral information about ongoing health insurance and care. And then we do have a mental health director who's a psych professional who actually helps us and is available to debrief with us as clinicians, with attorneys, with the teams that are taking care of the client. And so I just want to say that's something we really extend to you as the community of service providers. So please do reach out to us, as we have people who are really skilled in mental health debriefs and peer support. So I will stop there. Thank you so much for listening about the UCSF Health and Human Rights Initiative, and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Triveni. Let me look for any questions. The first one, and folks, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the Q&A function, and we'll try to get to them. But the one that I did see for this presentation is, what credentials are needed in order to be trained to conduct forensic exams? Is it MDs only?
Really, really good question. And I will be honest, we're really jumping into this question right now because we know that there's increased scrutiny in immigration courts. And so credentials really matter when it comes to being an expert witness. And we do not want to put our clients at risk or ourselves at risk by having people do evaluations that don't have the right credentials. So I'll tell you what our current approach is, which is that you don't have to be a physician. You can be an MD. If you are, you should be licensed, and you should have your scope of practice match the scope of practice that's needed to evaluate the client. So, for example, like I'm an internist, I take care of adults. I wouldn't do a pediatric evaluation of a 5-year-old. That would be very hard for me to justify. So that's really important to reflect on. There are non-MDs like mid-levels, like nurse practitioners or physician's assistants who can absolutely do evaluations if they have the right scope of practice. Again, same thing as I would apply to MDs there. And then where I think it's much more complicated are amongst the psych professionals. There's a very wide range of mental health professionals who can do these evaluations that go all the way from LMFTs to different orders of social workers to psychologists and psychiatrists. And we have folks across all parts of that spectrum, actually, who are doing evaluations with us, as long as they have the right experience and supervision. And so the answer is it depends. The other thing I'll say is so much is shifting in this area, and we're really re-examining to make sure that what we're doing is high quality. And so we have convened an advisory council of immigration lawyers from many of your organizations, actually, who we've worked with over the years, who are really trusted partners. And we have a number of questions for them that we want to work on collaboratively. Questions like this, like around our credentials, around the types of credentials we present in immigration court, so that we're really prepared for the increased scrutiny that we anticipate. We've already noticed that we're being called to provide testimony in court much more often than we were even a couple of months ago. And so we had a testifying practice session actually 2 weeks ago with the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies from UC Law, and did some like mock trials, and continued to try to really train ourselves up so that we can provide the most high quality evaluations.
Thank you. That was a robust answer. That's very appreciated. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so thank you so much. I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Rich for some final thank yous.
Yeah, thank you so much, Triveni, and to your team for these fantastic presentations, and more importantly, the services you all provide. And it's so encouraging to know that the healthcare setting here in the Bay is really proactively making sure that our immigrant community is supported and has safe access to medical services and medical services that can support their immigration journeys. So I hope that folks here made note of all the various links in the chat. We also will be sending out follow-up emails for folks. We also include links to the toolkit that was mentioned in our SF Immigrant Forum website that Jamie ran through at the top of the meeting. So just encouraging folks to look there for recordings of our webinars, look there for the other information. So just thank you again for this excellent presentation and for the support that you're doing in this moment to support our immigrant community. And I'll pass it back to Jamie for final reminders and next steps.
Thanks, Rich. I just want for folks that joined a little bit late and maybe didn't get some of the reminders that I shared up top, I'll share my screen really quickly. Right, so we just want to thank you all again, as Rich said, for joining us today. I think it's really so important for us to be sharing resources in this space on a regular basis to support our immigrant communities. Our next meeting of the regular forum meetings is on Wednesday, July 30th, same time, 2:30 p.m. in a webinar format. And the topic will be language access policy and community resources. So we hope you can join us. I just put the link in the chat, and that will be available to share over the listserv. And also it's already on our website, sf.gov/immigrants. And another quick reminder, we're inviting folks, if you have a presentation to share for the good of this group and a upcoming program, service, or something relevant, please do sign up for a 15 to 20-minute presentation for an upcoming forum meeting. Again, these are every other month. The link is also in the chat, and you can use the QR code here to sign up. And we look forward to seeing some of you present in the future. And that is all for today. Really, again, appreciate everyone for being here. And we'll be sending out the recording of this webinar as well as the slide deck and related materials over the listserv. So thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.